Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Hello and welcome back to episode 10 of Unlimited Limited, the show where we talk about Star Wars Unlimited's limited environments like Draft and Sealed, and in this case, pre-release, specifically the Legends of the Force pre-release, which I was lucky enough to have attended 2 of this past weekend. I had a great time, it was a ton of fun, and we're going to talk about the games that I had this weekend, and specifically the implications that I can draw from this weekend to what I think Draft might be like. So, the first night, I was playing Kenobi Blue. It was a very interesting deck, and I thought Kenobi was going to be a very good leader, but spoilers for sort of this video, I think Kenobi is even better than I thought he was, for sure. So using the Force is definitely not free, getting that out of the way. And if you build a deck around using the Force and you can struggle to get the Force, that can really pretty much just lose you the game immediately. In Draft, you can't consistently have, your full deck being Force units. So sometimes you'll have to play non-Force units. So getting down those early Force units and getting an attack in is so important. And if you can lock your opponent out of getting the Force early, yeah, you really should do that. There is a card, I think it's called Crushing Blow. It's 3 cost to defeat a unit that costs 2. There would be many games where if assuming you have the initiative, you play a 2-drop, they play a 2-drop that's a Force unit, and then you pass, and then you immediately before anything, you just Crushing Blow their 2-drop, and that feels awesome. You've locked them out of the Force, who knows what they're going to do with that? It's very, very important. Games were won or lost this weekend based on entirely whether you're able to maintain that Force value. But in the deck where you're able to maintain some amount of board presence, which, again, most of the time when you're building a decent pre-release deck, you should be able to do that. You could get it pretty consistently. And so this using the Force and cashing it in for an experience counter was actually incredible. There were so many cases where that just changed the math on things. In particular, I have another card on the screen right now, Axe Woves, which is I'll just say it's a 3-cost 2/2 Mandalorian Trooper, Vigilance at rare. It's a ground unit, and it has shielded, and this unit gets +1/+1 for each upgrade on him. So when he comes down, he's a 3/3, right? Because the shield is an upgrade. And then if you exhaust Kenobi and put a shield on, or put an experience counter on him, he's a 5/5, right? Experience counters actually give this guy +2/+2. And that is incredible, and that won me so many games. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. If you really did need the Force as part of your game plan, of course, Obi-Wan flips and attacks as a Force unit and will give you the Force. That came up a lot. There was oftentimes something I wanted to do in my hand that required the Force, and I just kind of had to wait until Obi-Wan flipped because I didn't have enough Force units in my deck, which, that's sealed. Sometimes you get enough, sometimes you don't. But yes, so Axe Woves won me a lot of games on his own. He was sort of the all-star for this deck. I like to highlight what legendaries I had in the deck here, but I didn't have any legendaries in my deck, but Axe Woves definitely felt like one. And then the next deck I had, as we'll see, there was a legendary that did not feel like one. All right, let's get into the actual list. We'll just go through it one at a time here and talk sometimes at length and sometimes very briefly about each card in the deck. So Curious Flock, as I said in the set review, is very much just it just goes in. It's a curve filler. It can be a kind of medium 2-drop, a medium 3-drop, a medium 4-drop. I say medium, it's worse than medium. But, the fact that it can be like a below average any unit is very good. And oftentimes, I had 5 resources and a few cards in my hand, including a couple of 2-drops, maybe a 6-drop, and then this. And it was okay, well, you know what? I would rather have this as a 5/5 than a more efficient 2-drop, right? If that's the only thing I'm going to be able to play. Or I could play this as a 3/3 and then, still play my 2-drop, right? It came up a lot that it was just very flexible, and I was never excited to play it, but it was always yeah, all right, sure, this is fine. So definitely I'm still high on this card. I was high on it in the set review, and I'm high on it now. Gifted Urchin, like I said in the set review, if you need to run a 2-cost unit, it's fine. It has the Force, and that's exactly what it was. It was a Force enabler, really, and that was it. There was never really a time that I was happy to have it, but when I looked down and I saw it in my hand on turn 1, I was yeah, okay, this is a 2-drop, and it does get me the Force, so sure, I guess. Lors Antica, it's kind of the opposite problem of Gifted Urchin, where it's statted better, but it's statted poorly into the format, and it's not a Force unit. So when I looked down and saw this on turn 1, it was always oh man, this is a risky play, right? Because if my opponent plays a 2/4, then this just is very unfortunate. Now, the when defeated works very well with Axe Woves, and I did that twice, and it was awesome. So that was quite incredible, you know. I play 2-drop, they play 2-drop. Next turn I play Axe Woves, and then they kill Lore Santika, and now I have a 5/5 shielded. Like, yeah, it's all right. All right, next we have Minoc, and so I haven't talked about space yet. And like I sort of expected, most people were kind of ignoring space this weekend, and I think that it's okay to do that in this format. Not completely. You can't completely ignore space because, again, if your opponent puts a Minoc in space, hey, it's not a vehicle, it can hold a lightsaber, right? And they put a lightsaber on it, and they just donk you for 4 or 5 every turn or whatever, right? That's pretty annoying for sure, and can win them the game pretty easily. So you can't completely ignore space, but you can kind of ignore space, and that is what happened a lot this weekend. I ignored space a little bit. That was kind of not out of my own. That was not really my own choice, though. It was sort of my sealed pool made me ignore space, but nevertheless, yeah, Minoc is like fine, just as expected. It performs pretty much exactly as you would expect a 2-cost 2/3 space overwhelm to perform. Next, we have Secretive Sage, which is another all-star. This card is very good. Sort of like Gifted Urchin. It's a 1-cost force unit, or not 1-cost, like a turn 1 force unit that is pretty survivable, right? Your opponent's not killing this on turn 2 unless they, you know, Crushing Blow it or hit it with like hard removal of some kind. Whirlwind of Power also does it. So as a result, unless your opponent is just like blindly killing this, it holds lightsabers very well. Now be careful, because as I said, if you play this and then you play Heirloom Lightsaber on it and your opponent has Crushing Blow, that is a crushing blow to your win chance. That is not good. Getting 2 for 1 at any point in the game is bad, but especially that early, right? That's devastating. That being said, removal is reasonably scarce in the format, and this card is quite strong. It really, really is. It holds experience counters well with Kenobi. Like, just it being a 3/3 shielded is very nice, and, you know, that enables the actual force mechanic that Obi-Wan asks of it. Yeah, very good card. I will be taking them probably higher than I originally thought I would. Also, I think it's constructed playable, so we'll see how that goes, though. So yeah, Galactic. Next we have Heirloom Lightsaber. So lightsabers were better than I thought they were going to be. Now, I knew that removal was not going to be very abundant in this format, but I don't think I realized just how scarce removal is. Like, it does exist for sure, but it's really, really rare. As a result of that, putting Heirloom Lightsaber on anything is a large increase to that unit's ability to trade up and get you a bunch of extra value, not to mention the restore, because you're probably usually going to be putting this on a force unit like Secretive Sage. And if you are scared of Crushing Blow, just wait and put it on your 3-drop, right? Like, you can dodge that if you are genuinely terrified or you're playing best of 3 and you've already seen that your opponent has it, right? Like, you can play around some of the removal. You can't play around all of the removal. You know, if you get Shatter Pointed, that's just tough. But, like, you know, play around what you can. Yeah, lightsabers are very good. Like I said earlier, people don't expect you to be able to put lightsabers on space units because I think until this set we haven't had any non-vehicle space units. Now we do. So yeah, definitely can be something to watch out for. It does not. Now, putting a lightsaber on a space unit doesn't feel as good as piloting in JTL, but that's okay. It's still quite strong. Next, as I mentioned, Axe Woves, incredible card. I think I underrated it in the set review. I don't remember what I gave it, but possibly in my what I got wrong with this format. If I did not give this a high grade, I will be talking about it in another video. But yes, I don't need to talk too much more about this card. It was just very good. Hive Defense Wing, very fine, very mediocre. Like, I was never very happy to play this card. It was just like, yeah, all right, sure, I'll go into space. Usually I was either, if my opponent wasn't doing stuff in space, I was usually resourcing this card. And only when my opponent started playing stuff to space was like, okay, fine, I'll stop resourcing Hive Defense Wing. But yeah, usually I ended up resourcing it, but that's not like necessarily correct. Like, there is maybe a world where I should have been being more aggressive in space, but just the fact that it's not a force unit, like attacking with it every turn and not getting the force is like pretty unfortunate in this format, I've found. Again, with my very limited experience, you know, that my tune may change on that, but nevertheless, I think, yeah, this card is probably what I gave it in the set review, which I don't remember, but it was a predictably mediocre card. Outer Rim Mystic is an interesting one. A 3-cost 2/6 is very sticky. It does hold lightsabers well, although I don't think I ever did that. It does hold lightsabers well. It pretty much guarantees that you get the force in a way similar to Secretive Sage, like that even if your opponent swings something into it, assuming it's like on curve, it's going to live that attack and get to attack back. It does hold experience counters pretty well as well. You know, a 3/7 is pretty juicy. That is, it trades with a lot of stuff. Trades even or down or sometimes up. Sorry, I say trades, I mean like eats, right? Like it just kills that thing without it itself dying. Yep, solid card. It is kind of like draft chaff in the sense that like don't pick this card first, right? You know, you'll get enough Outer Rim Mystics. You don't want more than a couple. But you know, they're curve fillers, they're force enablers. They hold lightsabers well. Yep, definitely something to keep in mind. Next up, Crushing Blow, which is removal that I probably underrated now that I'm thinking about it, because looking at this card, it doesn't actually seem that good to me, but the performance I saw from it this past weekend is actually very good. Like I said, a lot of games start with turn 1 2-drop, or specifically Secretive Sage, and turn 2, you know, put a lightsaber on it. And if you have Crushing Blow when your opponent does that, that's like I said, that's a beating. So definitely, probably still not great removal. We're going to see better removal in a minute, but it's better than I thought it was, and definitely worth considering. Next, we have Overpower, unit +3/+3 and Overwhelm. I don't think I ever used this card even one time. I almost did once. If I had one more action, it would have won me a game, I guess, but it was pretty much always just resourced. These sort of temporary like giant growth effects are usually not that good in draft, right? Well, giant growth in Magic is better than this, right? Because you can use it kind of like a combat trick that can, sort of stand in for removal sometimes. Whereas this is not that. This is sorcery speed giant growth, and it's not that good. Try to avoid playing this card. Next is Whirlwind of Power, which I think is one of the better pieces of removal in the set. Of course, there are a lot of 2/4s, so -3/-3 does not deal with those, but there are also a lot of X3s and X2s. Again, I think Secretive Sage is a very good card in draft and constructed, and Whirlwind of Power just deals with that immediately, and it doesn't have the downside of Crushing Blow because it's a lot more versatile in where you can use it. The power debuff is also nice. One thing that you can do in the Kenobi mirror match is if you do this on their Kenobi, now your Kenobi can just take it out, right? Because it's a 0/3. That is something that has come up, and probably I expect to come up a lot in the draft format because Kenobi does seem so strong. Kenobi Blue especially, and maybe Kenobi Red. I think Yellow's a little bit weaker in this format. In this format. We'll talk about that in a bit. So definitely, we all saw this coming, though. This is not a surprise. Whirlwind of Power is removal, and removal is good. Next, we have Itinerant Warrior, which I thought was a fine inclusion in the deck. I was never, excited to play it. But, again, like I said about Secretive Sage, the shield means that you can pretty much get in. Jedi's a relevant tag. Holds lightsabers okay. And, yeah, the heal 3 damage does come up a lot. That usually negates, one of your opponent's attacks, right? That definitely comes up. And then it can get the force back, right? Because it's a force card. Yeah, I think Itinerant Warrior is a solid card, and I will absolutely be drafting them. Hopefully around, I don't know, pick 5, maybe pick 4. Next is Jedi Temple Guards, which, as we've talked about, force units with ambush are very deceptively good, because being able to just get force from hand immediately is nice. Usually by the time you're playing this, you'll be able to find something that you can run it into. Like I've said in the past, 2 attack on an ambush unit is tough. The Restore 2 helps, and yeah, the fact that it instantly gives you the force is really what I like most about this card. It's a fine card. It's not as good as Itinerant Warrior, for example, in the 4 slot, I don't think, but it is, yeah, it's solid, and I'll absolutely be taking these when I'm drafting. All right, so here's an exciting thing that I did. I did 3 off-aspect cards in my draft pool. Should I have done that? Maybe. Should you do that? Maybe. But I did, and I'm glad I did. I got good value out of all 3 of them. So let's talk about it. Kiadimundi. Many people are calling him the best card in the set, and I am inclined to agree. Kiadimundi is insane. I've been playing him when I've been doing some testing for some lists that I'm working on for Galactic, and he's just always insane and constructed. He was crazy every time I played him in Limited. Obviously, he's a little bit less good when I'm playing him for 6 like I am in this deck, but 6 cost 4/4 that draws 2 cards with the Force tag is still good somehow, right? We did it. Is he worth playing off aspect though? I'm not sure. Like, I thought it was good enough, but, should you be doing it? I don't know. Test it. Let me know how it goes for you. But no, I thought he was a solid inclusion here. Next is Luthen Rail, which was pretty much just a stats beast for me. I think I had the one lightsaber in this deck, and I don't think I ever got it off of Luthen Rail, so it was just a 4 cost 4/5. Didn't have the Force tag. It was kind of a sad inclusion, although I do think the card is good, and I think it's better now than I did a week ago, because I'm realizing that lightsabers are better than I thought they were. So yeah, Luthen Rail is definitely gone a little bit up in my estimation, and yeah, just a 4 cost 4/5 is just like good stats, right? Nothing more to say there. Medical Frigate. The heal did matter exactly one time, but I've found it comes up less than you think it will. Your opponent usually can find some way to play around it. I think the only reason it came up for me is because my opponent didn't read the card, and they were, caught off guard by it. And of course, it's pre-release. You can take it back if you want, but yeah, the card, I can't quite figure out why it isn't good, because it reads really good to me, but it doesn't seem to be working that often. Now, of course, it's a pretty small sample size so far, but I'd be interested to hear your experiences on Medical Frigate as well, because, again, it reads like a good card, and I probably will keep playing this card. Like, I mean, the fact it just goes in every heroism deck is nice. It shores up your space, which is nice, and it has an effect on the ground arena with the on-attack. Those are all good things, but I think the problem is there were no space units that had the Force tag, except for Leia, I guess. So, like, attacking in space just always felt like I was getting a little bit behind because I wasn't getting that Force tag. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Interested in hearing your comments and thoughts on that. Next up is our second out of aspect card, which is Talzin's Assassin. This card is also a card that people are rating very highly in this set. It's probably in a lot of people's top 10s for this set. Very good card. I don't think I actually got to use the effect, and I ended up resourcing it a decent amount. This one is the one I'm the least convinced about for my splash, but nevertheless, is a 6 cost 4/4 that eats something small when it comes in good enough. I don't know. 4 cost 4/4 that does that, absolutely yes, but I don't know about the 6 cost. This one is maybe a mistake, but it has the Force tag. It's solid. It's not bad stats. I like it. I don't regret it, but just because my pool is not actually that amazing, so or not that, didn't have that many cards in it that I could do, so I had to do a decent amount of splashes. And I think in terms of the splashes that were available to me, this one was one of the better ones. In a villainy deck, which unfortunately I did not play this weekend, didn't get that chance. I think it's obviously ridiculous though. I'll be taking this card pick 1, pick 2, easily in draft. Next we have Blue Squadron Assault Wing. Now this one actually did feel very good. And I think it's just because it doesn't matter if you're getting the Force if you're doming your opponent for 6 every time you attack, right? It doesn't feel like you're getting behind in the same way it does with Medical Frigate, where you're attacking for 3 every turn. This was just a beating. Of course, the Graceful Purgo, which we'll talk about next, having a 7 toughness, did come up every now and then. But it's still good, and I'll be picking them up. It's a fine card. It attacks very aggressively. And again, your opponent's probably going to be ignoring space. So if you can take a little bit of time to play this as your 5-drop in space, and if you can afford to kind of ignore the ground there, you might sometimes need to resource this card if the battle's fully going on the ground and you're really even with your opponent and need that little edge. Playing this into space might actually just put you so far behind. So you have to be careful when you play cards like this in formats that are so ground heavy, but nevertheless, I think that it's something that I will be absolutely including, because if you can ever get your opponent lacking on a turn, right, and you can play this into space, then the 6 to their base every turn is going to run away with the game sometimes. And then, of course, it's arch nemesis, the Graceful Purgil, the 2/7 Sentinel. This actually won one of my opponents a game. It's just such a big Sentinel and very difficult to get around. This is, again, I think I said this in the pre-release, if you want to ignore space, I think that's something you can do in this format. but I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to have a couple of Graceful Pergil, because that way you can ignore space and just throw this down. And then if your opponent's trying to do something in space, it's just been either completely shut down or put on a multiple turn hold. So yes, I am fond of this card. Next, we have Paladin Training Corvette. This one I didn't really like. It didn't really get there for me. I think I one time got 2 experience counters off of it, and that felt fine. But every other time I drew it, I just resourced it because there just wasn't a time that I really had more than 2 force units. And usually, even if I did have 2 force units, there was something else I needed to play. Like I said earlier, you need to play to the ground in this format. And if you take a turn off in space, sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that can win you the game, like with a card like this. But sometimes it will not do that, and this card does not win you the game in space. Again, 5 costs and then is attacking for 3 is just not that good. And I think that I will be trying to avoid cards like this card in the future. Now, of course, I don't have a crazy amount of force units, and if I had more, it's possible that this card would be better. Definitely interested in your experiences there. Relic Scavenger, which has a big butt as a 4/6, and I think that actually was good enough a lot of the time. It was just like, yep, I'm putting this down and you have to deal with it, or otherwise I'm going to start picking off your units and healing my base, and also, yeah, just a very solid card. It doesn't have the force, which is weird, but it does hold lightsabers okay despite that. Now, of course, you're not getting the restore 1 off of the common lightsaber here, but yeah, I think this card is fine. I'll be picking it up about middle range. Next up is the Daughter, which I actually didn't draw one time. Again, I think this card is really good. I just have not seen it, so I can't really comment on how it played for me. But yeah, I think this card is good. It like soft gives all of your force units restore 2. It's not exactly that, but and it is itself a force unit. It's just one aspect. If you want to hear the set review, you'll listen to the set review. So I shouldn't yap. You want to hear me talk about cards I played, and I never drew this card, so tough. Next up is Craving Power, our final and probably best splash. People are calling it like Overwhelming Barrage at home, and it's not near as good as Overwhelming Barrage, just to be abundantly clear here. Overwhelming Barrage and Limited, I still think it's the best card they've ever printed in terms of power level. It is ridiculous. And this is not that, but it is still very good, and it's even good for 7. If I had an opportunity to play this for 5, I would have felt even better, but yeah, the fact that it has a permanent buff, and then usually with that buff, you guys all know how Overwhelming Barrage plays, is able to just completely kill something. And that is a very, very powerful effect. You know, it's removal that also buffs one of your units. Very good, and it sort of subverts one of the downsides of playing equipments, right? Which is if you play an equipment and your opponent has removal, you just 2 for 1 yourself. Well, if you play this and your opponent has removal, you know, it's 1 for 1 because you've just removed one of their units as well, and now they've removed your 2 units. So, you know, they're 2 cards down and you're 2 cards down, right? So the, worst case scenario, this card is like a draw in terms of like, value. But it is very much always better than that if they do not have removal in their hand for it, because it removes something and then now it can trade up into something even better. Yeah, this card is worth playing for 7. It's not worth playing for 9, I don't think. Don't try that, but it is worth playing for 7. And if you can play it for 5, it's going to be insane. This is a first pickable card easily. Now, it's double aspect, of course. That is risky, but like I said, if you're willing to compromise on one of those aspects, which you are with this card, then it becomes a lot easier. You only need to be in either villainy or command for this to work. Obviously, you would prefer to be in both, but don't let that lock you out of a, say, really good heroism deck that happens to have command as well. Yeah. Very solid card. Highly recommend taking this earlier. It's one of the better bombs in the set so far. Next is Hyperspace Wayfarer. This card is fine. It sort of does a similar thing to Graceful Pergil, but the lack of Sentinel means that, you're not going to be action cheating quite as well here, because this one your opponent is going to need to run their space units into if space is really part of their game plan, and that's going to give you all these actions to do whatever else you want and have initiative. But this time it does something kind of similar, but it's not quite the same, because you need to be the one taking actions now. Now the stats are quite a lot better, and there is the removal spell that looks at your opponent's toughness, or it looks at your toughness. So in that case, it's just removal. It's just deal 10 damage or something. I don't think anything in this format that doesn't have a shield survives that. It's like a fine card. It's not something you want to take early. It's pretty much what we all expected. It played fine. Yeah. Trident Assault Ship, or Colossal Dreadmaw, in space, of course, was also very solid in this sort of a similar way. Now, unlike Hyperspace Wayfarer and more like Blue Squadron Assault Wing, Trident Assault Ship felt like actually kind of a beating in space. Like if your opponent, if you were able to take an action off and play this, or turn off and play this in space, and you didn't need to be like tightly fighting for the ground, this just like ran away with the game. 6 to face every turn is ridiculous. And even if they play another ship that you're a little bit worried about, you can just take that out easily with it, and then you overwhelm over, and then you still have this big beast with just a few less HP, right? Ridiculous card. Very, very strong. Overwhelm's a little bit weaker in this format just because of all the shields and how that interacts, but it's still very good, and I will be taking this somewhat highly. Next, we have Priestesses of the Force in the deck, which is a very good top end that also, unfortunately, I did not get to play even one time. My opponent played it once, and it was very good. But yes, unfortunately, this is just nothing more to say about this. I still think this is great top end. I'll still be taking this card. But yeah, I just didn't have an opportunity to play it, unfortunately. And lastly, It's Worse. So I didn't do the little gimmick with the Precarious Predicament thing. I just ran It's Worse straight up as a 7-mana Vanquish, or 7-resource Vanquish. And it was fine. Yeah, I mean, it's what you expect from a 7-resource Vanquish. Like, it did the work that it needed to do. It wasn't exceptional. I was never like, oh boy, I just got so much value. Like, it pretty much always traded down, but, it did what it needed to do. And especially in pre-release where things are a little bit slower, it was sometimes didn't trade down. It sometimes traded even or sometimes up. Right? It's just good, unconditional, almost non-leader, right? Removal. And I think I will be taking this card reasonably highly. Especially because, as I said, removal is so scarce in this format. So even though this removal is like pretty inefficient, right? 7-mana Vanquish. Oh my goodness, I did it again. 7-resource Vanquish is not like anything exciting, but removal is so scarce in this format. Sometimes you gotta compromise and take mediocre removal, and this is mediocre removal, but mediocre removal is still removal, and removal is good. So how did this deck do? I know you're all excited to hear. So my 3 matches with this deck were Third Sister, which I won, Qui-Gon, which I won, Kanan, which I won, and then another Kanan, which unfortunately I lost. So I went 3-1 with this deck. I think 3 of the games were very close, maybe 2 of the games. Yeah, both of my Kanan games were very, very close. Like, I think the one I won, I think I won by like 1 action, and the one I lost, I think I lost by like 1 action. Like they were both very close games. Even the other 2 games were like still pretty close. Like, and the other thing is, I think I kind of underestimated Kanan a little bit. Like I knew he'd be solid, but there are a decent amount of creatures, and shield counters are good. Another thing that I thought was quite cool is there was a lot of diversity in leaders. Obviously, at pre-release for JTL, a lot of people were running Boba or Luke, and that's because they were the best leaders, and everyone kind of figured it out immediately. I mean, just read Boba, right? Like the leader ability is the ability is crazy, especially in pre-release. But in this, it was less obvious, and that sort of manifested by people playing all sorts of different stuff. The fact that I got double Kanan, I'll give you a little spoiler. That was the only leader I faced more than once this weekend, which is very exciting and refreshing to see. So. Very cool and well played to all of my opponents on the Friday night. It was exceptional, and I think I learned a lot about the format. All right, let's talk about Saturday after I eat dinner. All right, so on Saturday night, I ran Kenobi again. This time red, but I still did run Kenobi. Now, it wasn't obvious which leader I was going to run. In fact, for my first game, I ran Kit Fisto Green, so exact same deck, just different leader and base. And that went poorly. I lost that game, and I was like, you know what, there's probably not enough Jedi in this deck, which we'll see in a minute, to make that work. So I'll switch to Obi-Wan, and we'll see how that goes, and we will talk about how that went. So in this deck, like I said a minute ago, last time I had, Axe Woves, and that felt like a legendary, but wasn't. This time I had the Father, which was a legendary, but did not feel like it. So that is my spotlight here. Let's get into the actual deck list. So, once again, we had Curious Flock, already talked about that. Sorceress Blast is just pretty much Lightning Bolt. Of course, there's that downside of you need to use the Force, which is real for sure, like we talked about. That is any extra stuff you have competing for the Force can be a problem. but nevertheless, it's still a very solid card. Next, we have one other thing I want to talk about with this removal. Like I've said earlier, it's kind of okay to ignore space sometimes in this format. Not completely ignore it, but like mostly ignore it. And the more removal you have, the easier it is to do that. Because if your opponent tries to get cheeky and put stuff up in space, then you can just use your removal for that. And then, you can use your presumably more efficient units on the ground. If your opponent's playing to space, you probably have put more units onto the ground. And maybe they're better units because they decided to focus more on space in their deck building. That argument is not quite as sound, but more units, it's likely. So you can maybe compete in space by using these efficient pieces of removal, like Sorceress Blast, that will often be trading up. So that is helpful there. Next, we have Adigalia, who I think is constructed playable. This card's very good. How often is the when opponent plays an event, deal 1 damage to that player's base, come up in limited? Not super often when it's a very unit-heavy sort of style of game. But the 2/4 stat line is great, of course. Force tag is great, and that is the main features of this card. If this card was a 2-cost 2/4 with the force tag, it would have 90% of its power right now. That extra 10% is definitely nice, but not what makes this card awesome. Great card, always amazing to play it on turn 1, always very happy about that. Next we have Jedi Consular, which also was a great turn 1 play, but for kind of a different reason. It also was kind of a good turn 2 play. And what I mean by that is, unless you were running one of the bases that gave you the force just kind of whenever you wanted it. So I think the blue base would work for this, and the green base would work for this, and then of course Avar Chris would work for this. Jedi Consular was never going to be getting that big discount on turn 2. It's going to be turn 3, because turn 1 you play it, turn 2 you attack with it to get the force, and turn 3, that's when you can actually use the force to get the big discount, and then you get a 5-drop, right? And you could get a 6-drop on turn 3, and that would be very good. And in fact, we'll get to it, but this card is great. Again, sort of similar to Adigalia, it's a early force unit that is very sticky and hard to remove, which can get you the force, and as we know, that's very important. 1/4 stat line is rough, but, in a pinch, Kenobi can make it a 2/5, and a 2/5 is definitely big. Same with Adigalia, can make it a 3/5, which is very nice. Jedi Starfighter was interesting because, so the Jedi tag is, whenever you're reading this deck, keep in mind that I built it with, I was unsure whether I should run Plo Koon or Kenobi, so there's a lot of Jedi in it because I was like, maybe Plo Koon, but no. Anyway, Jedi Starfighter did get there sometimes, especially whenever I could put a counter on him, because oftentimes your opponent will have a 3 toughness space unit, and then on one turn you attack into it with this, and then on the next turn you attack just into their base with this, and then ping that, and then if it's a 4 toughness space unit, you follow kind of the same line, but maybe you give it the experience counter with Kenobi. It's a fine unit. It's actually a pretty good space unit. It played a little bit better than I expected it to. But yeah, it's, again, still in space. It doesn't have the force tag, of course, so you might feel like you're getting a little bit behind if your turn 1 play is this and turn 2 is you start attacking while your opponent is building a big force presence on the ground. Those games are not games that you're likely to win. So just be careful whenever building around space stuff in this format, but the card is definitely not bad. Next we have Do or Do Not here, which ended up being all right. I think I only used it once, and it felt okay. The draw in this game, for the most part, is not that great. So whenever you do see any draw that's even slightly efficient like this, it's like, okay, yeah, sure. And yeah, that's what it was. I usually resourced it, but the time it worked, it was good. Lightsaber, as I talked about before, lightsabers ended up being very good in this format so far. A lot better than I expected. Again, just putting Lightsaber on Adigalia is okay, great. Now you have a 5/6 on turn 2 that is difficult to remove and can attack immediately, right? That's insane. Putting Lightsaber on Kenobi turns him into a 6/8, which is of course very good. Yeah, I am a big fan of Lightsaber, and I think that this is going to be one of the sleeper commons that people get beat by a few times before they go, oh, okay, actually, I should be taking more equipment. Pileo Star Compass is good, and in the set review, I believe I thought it was going to be good as well, but like I said earlier, with craving power, one of the downsides with putting any sort of equipment onto a creature or onto a unit is that if your opponent immediately removes it, you lose the value. But Peleo's Star Compass sort of gives you a bit of a softer blow with that, right? Because if you play this onto a unit and they immediately kill your unit, of course, that's not what you want to happen. But you still have gotten to draw another unit off of it. So your opponent, instead of 2 for 1ing you, is kind of 1 for 1'd you. And, that's probably still slightly better in their favor, but, I mean, it's still, you got a unit off of this, and now you can take initiative and maybe play that unit next turn. Yep, card's good. And then, of course, but that's only, like, if they have the exact removal they need, which, again, removal's rare in this format, so not a bad card, and I'll definitely be picking it up not super early, but yeah, pretty solid. Next we have Hyena Bomber, which I don't think I ever played once. In principle, the math of this card does work out okay. Like if your opponent plays something like Secretive Sage on turn 1 and you play some 1-drop aggression card, that's pretty good, especially if it's like a 2/4, like if you play Adigalia, for example. Then you pop the shield with that and then finish it off with this on turn 2. Like, yeah, that's good. But it's 3 cost 2/2 in space, which is an arena that you need to be really competitive in if you're going to try it all in this format. Like, I don't think it gets there. I don't think I played it once. I think I resourced it every time. I might be misremembering one time, but I'm pretty sure I did. Try to avoid cards like this, I think. And I knew that when I was putting in my deck. I really just needed the curve filler and the unit. Next, Jedi in Hiding, which I had 2 of. This card ended up playing a little bit slower than I was hoping and not quite as well as I was hoping, but again, small sample size, and I do still believe in this card. Like the fact that it's a force unit that pretty much is guaranteed an attack is nice. And then, if you have nothing better to do with that force token, and sometimes you will, sometimes you will want to curve this into like Kiadimundi, for example, in which case, you won't do the one defeated thing if that's how you need to get the force. But oftentimes you will do the one defeated thing and they discard a card, and that can be very meaningful. So definitely, because like if you attack into their 3/3 for 3, and then you're trading 1 for 1, but also they have to discard a card. That is very good, like for sure. So I still believe in this card, even though I personally didn't get a massive. I didn't feel the benefit of it this past weekend. I still think it's good. Outer Rim Mystic, I think we've already talked about. Overpower we talked about, not great. Kadu we haven't talked about. I don't think I played this card once. I really just needed a curve filler. I don't super believe in this card. Maybe in the creature deck it's good. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It's definitely good in the creature deck. I didn't play the creature deck. I played against 2 creature decks, not this day, but on Friday. And I don't think I saw Kadu in either of them. Yeah. I don't really believe in this card, but hey, you know what? There's a chance. Next, we have Medical Frigate, which we talked about, and then Quinlan Voss. So Quinlan Voss is a 4-cost 4/5 that has other text that really doesn't matter that much in Limited. Ideally, you put a lightsaber on him, and if you do that, then it does matter. So, and that is actually very, very good, right? If you have like Jedi's lightsaber, what is it called? It's up here. Yeah, Knight Saber on Quinlan Voss, that's ridiculous. You're probably going to win that game unless they have removal, right? You now have a 7/7 that when it attacks, it deals 2 to the base. So you're hitting the base for 9 every swing. Like that's going to close on turn 4. Like that's gonna close games. But that's kind of the nut scenario. And then of course if they have removal, you get blown out. I still very much believe in this card. And you know what? At the beginning of this little ramble about it, I said that this text doesn't matter, but it does matter. That does matter. But you need to get there on sort of things like equipment, and hopefully good equipment. And it is a Jedi, so you can put on Night Saber. And it's also not a vehicle, famously. Yep, I like it. And it has a force tag, of course. Next is Wampa, which is a 4-cost 4/5 as well with Overwhelm. It's fine. Doesn't have the force tag, so it suffers. It's probably better in a creature deck, which I did not play, so I can't directly speak to from experience. But yeah, I think this card is solid and great curve filler, and I just wish it had the force tag. Well, no, that maybe wouldn't work in the like lore of Star Wars, but for the purpose of it being a good card, if this had the force tag, would be a lot better. But that's okay. Not every card needs to be a force card. Next, we have Protect the Pod. This is one of the few pieces of removal in this format, especially at common. It is slightly awkward removal, right? Scherzer Strike? Is that what it's called? The Luke one from set 1. The picture of Luke on it. I think it's from set 1. It's like basically that, but it costs 1 more, and it has to do with HP, and it can't be a vehicle. Now, the can't be a vehicle isn't that relevant in this format. That will come up every now and then, but it's not that relevant. I think that this card is very solid. Again, you need removal, and obviously this is meant to synergize with the big space whale, so you can hit something for 10, right? And it does that very well. Next we have Blockade Runner. So yeah, take removal for sure, even if it's not great removal, although this is fine removal. I mean, it's 4 cost kill, probably a small thing. Most of the time in this format, the toughness of units is greater than the attack of units. Like, here's one, here's an example, here's an example, here's an example, right? Like, here's an example, here's an example. Of course, all the space whales. Like, toughness is going to be higher than attack in this format. I think it's called HP in this game. HP is going to be higher than attack in this format for the most part, so that line of text does matter for sure. Next, we have Blockade Runner. I think I used this once, and it was like a fine aggro finisher. But it was not something that I was super excited about. The Saboteur, I guess, is nice against those 2/7 space whales, but not much else. I thought the card was fine. I'm not going to take it super highly. A 5 cost 4/4 is like a little bit rough. Next we had Blue Squadron Assault Wing, which we've talked about, and then Dagoyan Master, which came up a lot. So this card was a game winner for me. The fact that when I played it, I got value. I drew a card, basically. It is better than drawing a card. And then when it's defeated, I also better than draw a card, and it's a force unit that is well statted. A 5 cost 5/5 is just solid, right? Like, if your opponent can't kill it immediately, because they're going to want to. You play this, you get value, and then your opponent knows that if you get to pass and take initiative and whatever, that you are going to attack with this unit immediately, probably into whatever their biggest thing is, kill both of them, and then draw another card, right? This is a insane card, and it's maybe first pickable. That might be a little bit ambitious. It's probably close. I would happily take this like pick 2, pick 3, and maybe even pick 1. Very good card. I think I underrated it in the set review, probably. Next we have, of course, if you have this in your hand and you don't have the force or any way to get it, that's tough. I mean, you can play it and like maybe you'll still get half of the value of like the one defeated, right? But definitely a tough spot to be in. You want it to get that value immediately, so your opponent doesn't even if they can remove it immediately and you don't get the force, you still replace itself and eaten one of the removal spells. Like, very nice. Relic Scavenger, I think we talked about. Yes. So Ray is a card that I originally was so confident I was going to cut. Like, it's a 5 cost 5/5 with basically no other text. It's a force unit though, and I was like, okay, how good is a 5 cost 5/5? That's really not good. Just like by itself, nothing. And this text never comes up. And then I realized that in my deck, this text actually does come up. Dagoyan Master draws the card, and it's a force unit. Pileo Star Compass, that was always nice, Turn 1, play a 2-drop. Turn 2, Pileo Star Compass, hit Ray. I think I had that happen once or twice, and it was very, very nice. Yeah, so I have those two, which is definitely not like a lot, but it was when it happened, it was awesome. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously a 5 cost 5/5 force unit's not exceptional, but that little bit of text was nice, and turns out. So that being said, I don't know if like in general you should be like picking Ray super early. I think that she might not come around late just because people take rares like pretty high for the most part, unless the rare is like obviously bad, and Ray is not obviously bad. Ray isn't even bad. Ray is okay, but she's good if you get there. So if I ever like, I don't know, if it's like pick 3 and I like look through my pool and I have like 3 ways to draw during my action phase or 4 ways to draw during my action phase, I'll happily take a Ray for sure. But pick 1, I'm not convinced. Like, it's just a 5 cost 5/5 a lot of the time with double aspect, right? Like that's a difficult thing to take early. Unlike Dagoyan Master, which is only command. Incredible. Speaking of only command, I had 2 Terran Tataks in my deck. That's actually the reason that I went green instead of blue. I was very close to going blue. I had Watto and a few other cards that I think are very strong, but the 2 Terran Tataks, a 5 cost 5/5 with basically unconditional ambush this format, incredible. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the force tag, but whenever your unit is this efficient, that is a fine trade-off. You are okay playing this card. This is... I want to be careful because I'm about to make a statement. In some packs, this is a first pickable card. I think so. I think I would pack 1, pick 1 Terran Tatex sometimes. It's just such a beating. It one-shots some leaders on their flip turns. It almost one-shots some of the really good leaders like Snoke and Talzin and Kenobi so that you can pretty easily finish them off with some other unit on curve, right? It's just ridiculous. This card is insane. I had 2 of them. It won me games. Insane card, as we all know. I don't really have anything else to say about Terran Tatek. Great card. Next up, we have Hyperspace Wayfarer, which is okay. Again, it's sort of... I think I would prefer the 2/7 Sentinel in my decks rather than the 4/10 Vanilla. Obviously, this is like the dream with Protect the Pod, right? You just deal 10 to something, but like, I just don't think so. It's okay. Like, again, sorry. That makes it sound like I'm saying you shouldn't put it in your deck. You should put this in your deck as like top end, like C- filler. Like, this is like, okay, yeah, I need a 6-drop. Maybe I need a space unit. Bam, Hyperspace Wayfarer. It's fine. That's what I have to say about that. Next, we have Longbeam Cruiser, which is of course, the big restore ship. This was actually kind of nice. Like, you'd think the restore one wouldn't matter, but it made me feel a lot safer in some games. The big ship of itself didn't help. And, it is a big ship. It attacks well. So the restore is surprisingly relevant. It felt much more relevant than I expected it to. But, of course, the real reason you play this ship is to start swinging in for 6 every turn, 7 sometimes if you're in Kenobi, right? And, again, yeah, just that restore one is nice. Don't really have much else to say about the ship. It sort of has the same feature of like those other ships that I've talked about today, where it's like, if you can take a turn off to play a ship, it will probably win you the game. But if you can't take a turn off to play the ship and you do anyway, that can probably just put you way too behind on the ground. And even though you probably have space at that point, you're going to lose on the ground before you can win on space. And again, the restore one helps a little bit with that, but really you shouldn't be taking a full turn off to play this unless you're, ideally a little bit ahead on ground, but at the very least at parity, right? But even at parity is a risky game. It's a risky card, but I like it. Next up, we have Mace Windu, which is, of course, one of the best cards in the set. It's just like 6 cost 6/6 Overwhelm, obviously already quite good, and then when played, just kill something basically if you use the Force, and then it's a Force unit itself and a Jedi. Like, yeah, yes please. Where do I sign up? I would play multiple of these, obviously. Card's insane. We all know that. I don't even know if there's any like worthy analysis. This, I guess, the one thing I will say is the same thing I said about Sorcerer's Blast, about like, if you want to like ignore space, put in more cards like Mace Windu, because he can just donk a space unit, and then you didn't even need to play the space. You got to play an efficient ground unit, and you dealt with their turn 3 play or turn 4 play or whatever. Very, very good card. We all knew that though. Speaking of cards we all know are good, is Kelleran Beck, which of course was also quite nuts. The body itself is good. It dodges basically all of the removal in the format. It attacks. It can basically kill anything on attack or start getting into base. It gets the Force. It gets you another unit. I think it costs 3 less. So I think one time where it was a bit of a Whitmore situation, but I want to talk about it anyway because it's so awesome. I played Kelleran Beck and I had extra resources that I could pay. So I got Dagger Master, which got me another card. Because guess what? Kelleran Beck doesn't need to use the Force to do its ability. It can just do it. It can just do that ability. So even if you're behind on like Force stuff and your opponent's kind of controlling you out of that, after this turn you won't be, because you're going to play Kelleran Beck, which is a Force unit, and you're going to use him to get another Force unit. Digging the top 7 cards of your deck, especially by the time you play Kelleran Beck, is going to probably be the rest of your deck. I think one time when I played him, I had 8 cards left, so I got to search all but the bottom card. And then one time when I played him, I had 5 cards left, so I got to search my entire deck. It was, very, 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 very good card. But again, we all knew that. Definitely play cards like Kelleran Beck. And lastly, the legendary of the deck, but much less legendary than Mace Windu or Kelleran Beck or Terran Tatek or anything like that, or Dagger Master, is the Father. I don't think I played him once. He was always a resource. That being said, I don't think he's terrible. He's fine. There's just so much better you can be doing for 8. He does sort of eliminate your Force concerns forever, right? Because if you don't have the Force when you play him, you can get it by attacking with him. And it's not like you need the Force after you play an 8-drop for that turn. That's all your resources, probably. So, you play him, next turn you attack with him, and then you never worry for the Force again. You never want for the Force again. You just have it. But, of course, if you're playing this on 8 and your opponent's playing, like, Kelleran Beck on 8, or if we're talking about another legendary, something like Yoda on 8, right? They're just going to win that game. And sorry, coloring back's on 7. So if they play coloring back on 8, then they can get a 4-drop for free. And that's just obviously a lot better than the father to get coloring back and a 4-drop. Card's not great. The like one saving grace kind of is that it is a neutral card, so it can just kind of go wherever, and that is why it got into this deck. I just didn't have the pool to put in like another fine, like, because my deck didn't need an 8-drop. Like Mace Windu and Coloring Back and Longbeam Cruiser are like good top end, right? I didn't need an 8-drop in this deck. I just played it because I truly didn't have another card that I could have put in instead. It's just really not worth it unless you absolutely have to run it, or just like, it's pre-release, you want to have a good time, and kind of both of those is where I was at. I could have like splashed for something like Watto. I thought that would maybe be silly, but like Watto for 5 isn't good enough. The benefit of Watto is that he gets down so early and starts getting value immediately, but yeah, no, I just put him in anyway. And that is a benefit, like the fact that he doesn't have any aspect is good, like for sure, but I would avoid this if I were you. So how did this deck go? So my first game was against Kenobi, and that was the one where I was playing the Kit Fisto version of this deck, and I lost that. Kit Fisto just wasn't the right leader for this deck. Then I went against Snoke. I believe I'm trying to remember. I might have game 2 and 3 mixed up, but either game 2 or 3 was against Snoke, which I ended up winning. Snoke, of course, is a very good leader. We all know that. And a few people at my pre-release were playing him. I only ended up playing against it once. But Snoke definitely, I felt the pressure with Snoke. The fact that he could just like make himself so big in a format without hard removal. Not that most hard removal hits leaders anyway, but in a format without, a lot of ways to deal with that, it can get out of hand quick. Snoke can win games on his own, but I did end up taking that game. I just got down on the board so much early, and whenever he flipped Snoke, I was pretty much just able to immediately kill him with like 2 actions. Or maybe it was 3 actions, but I did prioritize killing Snoke because I do respect the power that he can bring. Then my game, either 2 or 3, again, I don't remember which one, was against Talzin, and Talzin is another leader that I think we all know is very strong. That was a fun match for sure. The -1/-1 came up a lot, and I sometimes forgot about it. And then my opponent did it, and I was like, "Oh, that was a misplay. Whoops!" But I did end up running away with that one too. It was a cool game, and I think Talzin is, again, like I said, one of my picks for the best leaders in the set. And then my last game was against Cal Kestis, which was a cool match. So in my set review, I said that Cal was going to be decent because he flipped early, and that definitely mattered. Flipping early was very good. My opponent built their deck well, and it was aggressive, and I really did feel the pressure. But that there is kind of the downside of those early leaders, right, where they're statted pretty poorly. And once I dealt with him, just like, and I could deal with him. Once I stabilized a bit, like a 3-4 is not that big of a deal. And I was able to run away with that game as well. So I ended up going 3-1 again. So 3-1 both nights, Kenobi both nights. I didn't want to do the same leader both nights, but it's just what the pool gives you. That's why that was sort of my tiebreaker for why I ran Kit Fisto over Kenobi originally. Was I was like, oh, okay, well, I already played Kenobi. Let's try Kit Fisto. But no, Kenobi was the right leader for this deck for sure. One thing that I will note before we wrap up is I thought Maul was going to be the best leader for pre-release. And I don't know if I was wrong or not, because I think only a couple of people at my either pre-release, played Maul. I almost thought I was playing Maul on the second day. I had an okay dark side package, but including Malik, which is, of course, the Sith unit that is very good if you have a Sith leader and you're never playing Darth Revan in this sealed environment. So it would have been Maul. I was very excited to make that happen, but the deck didn't quite come together, so I ran this one instead. Anyway, yeah, so is Maul actually bad and I was wrong? I don't know. I'm interested to hear your experiences, genuinely, because I don't have any real data for myself for that. He still reads like a great leader to me. I still feel like he's probably very good. But if you guys have had different experiences, then I would absolutely love to hear them. Who do I think is the best leader after pre-release? For pre-release, I gotta say, Kenobi felt very, very strong. I think Snoke also has potential there, and maybe Maul as well. But again, I didn't see any Maul. The Maul is sort of in a theory space in my head. It's not in any practical area. But the heroes, or the leaders that I'm kind of most excited to draft are, Kenobi and Snoke. One leader that I'm kind of excited to draft that I maybe slept on a little bit in my set review as well was Kanan. But of course, Kanan is one that you kind of draft into your leader pool with like a backup leader in mind, because if you don't get there on creature stuff, Kanan's probably just not going to be good enough. But what does he flip as, like a 5/8 or something like that? Like, that's pretty ridiculous. With a shield, like, that's pretty ridiculous. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the pre-release that I did this weekend. Please share your thoughts. If you somehow made it to the end of my almost 8-hour set review, or no, almost 7-hour set review, then you heard me begging you to leave comments about your pre-releases, and I genuinely mean that. Hopefully you leave those comments. Really quick before we end, we're going to talk about overall thoughts on the format. Super early, obviously, so these are very subject to change, could be super wrong. I'm basing it off of 2 events, but nevertheless, here are my early thoughts. So as we've talked about, removal is scarce and powerful. So removal like Crushing Blow that would otherwise probably not be that strong, very, very strong. Obviously, Shatterpoint is like constructed good, so that doesn't need any introduction, but removal is very strong, and lightsabers are better than expected. Those 2 statements almost seem to contradict each other, right? Because in an environment in an environment with good removal, equipment gets worse, right? Because your opponents are playing more removal, and removal plays very well into equipments. But removal is scarce in this format. So even if your opponents are playing removal, and I think that it will take a long time for people to realize that Crushing Blow is actually a card that they should be running, because I just don't think it reads very well. It always trades down, right? It's very, very limited, because you're basically never playing 1-drops in your limited environment. So Crushing Blow is basically just defeat a 2-cost unit. Oh, I just realized. Curious Flock. Crushing Blow defeats Curious Flock. That's awesome. Anyway, but besides the point, it does seem contradictory that removal and lightsabers are both good. But I think they both are, and I think that if you have both in your deck, you are very well positioned, because if your opponent doesn't have the right piece of removal at the right time, a lightsaber will just run away with the game, I find. Especially if you put it on like commons like Secretive Sage, and then double especially if you're able to get it on like, I don't know, Axe Wolves or something, right? Although getting it on a Force unit is usually better, because you want to be attacking with those, and then lightsabers often have benefits for Force units, not always, but the common one like Heirloom Lightsaber does, for example. I find that the power here is in commons and uncommons. So cards like Kiadi-Mundi, Mace Windu, Talzin's Assassin, and Old Daka are all like basically the best cards for limited in the format. Best units for limited in the format. Of course, cards like Shatterpoint are going to be exceptional. But they're all common and uncommon, right? Like that says something. So in Magic, there's a term like a pauper format versus a prince format, where it's like how much you're relying on your bombs and your rares and your legendaries and whatever versus your just commons and uncommons. And I am going to make a prediction that this format is all about commons and uncommons. Every now and then, you'll get a good rare like Axe Wolves, a good rare like Qui-Gon Jinn, a good rare like Craving Power, but most of your power is going to be in commons and uncommons. And that's true in every draft format. Like, your whole deck is made of commons and uncommons. But, like, in this format, it's like, oh, they're the best cards in my deck most of the time, right? Like, Kiadi-Mundi is never not going to be the best card in your deck. And then the last thing I want to mention is, if possible, control the Force. And even, like, make plays that are, like, less optimal so that you can control the Force. When I was going into it, I figured that the Force was going to be a pretty big element of the game, but I didn't realize just how big it was. Like, there were games that I won and games that I lost just purely because I couldn't, or my opponent couldn't use the Force because the other player was, able to just keep killing their Force units. And even in ways that would be, like, generally kind of inefficient. Like, if I have a 4/4 down, like, let's say I have Kiadi-Mundi down, and my opponent plays, I don't know, like a 2/4 that doesn't have any other text or whatever. Most of the time, depending on the situation, I'm probably just going to run that thing into base, because I'm the beatdown most of the time in that scenario, right? If I have a 4/4, my opponent has a 2/4, I'm probably, going to win, like, an aggro race there. But there were some times where I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'll just remove you 2/4. Okay. Now you don't get the Force. I have the Force because I attacked with my 4/4 Force unit, right? Like, and I think that you're going to be doing that more this format than usual. Now, of course, keep in mind, like, when you should be the beatdown and not still, but factor that in for sure. I got a comment on my long YouTube video about this set, and there's one line in it I want to highlight in particular. It's by Jarrett Dawson. And it talks about constructed lightsaber in a Talzin deck. Completely swung my second match by being able to attach it to her on flip turn both games. So I've been talking about lightsabers being extra good in this format, and I think that's true. And what Jarrett is pointing out here is that if you put lightsabers on your leader units, which is so true, and I can't believe I don't think I've mentioned that yet, that's like so incredible, because I don't think there is a single piece of hard removal here that hits leaders. Now, of course, there's things like Mace Windu that can, donk a leader for 4. There's things like that Space Whale using like Protect the Pod and donking a leader for 10. But, those pieces of removal require setup. And so if you were able to get like a lightsaber on your leader, especially if it's a leader that will continually get value, like Mother Talzin shrinking opponent's units or Snoke growing himself, then you're just going to run away with the game most of the time. It's going to feel kind of like in Jump to Lightspeed whenever you get a pilot leader and your opponent doesn't, because your leader is just so much bigger than theirs. It's completely dominating the arena it's in, and there's no like real removal that can hit it. So in Jump to Lightspeed, the way you would counter that would be try your absolute hardest to control the space arena around flip turns. And in Legends of the Force, the way you're going to control that is what? Like, your opponent flips their leader, you're basically never going to be able to kill it with one swing. But so you just have to be careful about things like that, because putting a lightsaber on a leader unit is going to be insanely good, because there's no Rivals Fall in this format. If there was Rivals Fall in this format, that would be a very dangerous proposition, but there is not. So thank you, Jarrett, for the comment, and absolutely phenomenal point, and it's something that I will be paying more attention to in the future, because I think that that will win games. All right, it's tradition. Let's crack a pack. I actually already opened all my prize packs from pre-release, and I just happened to be in the area where the local game store I play at is today, so I ran in and bought a single pack. I don't know the last time I just bought a pack to open, but you know what? It's for the channel, so that's okay. Let me get that set up, and I will be right back. All right, we are back. I am not sponsored by Ultimate Guard, but I would like to be, so Ultimate Guard, if you are listening, I'm happy to be sponsored. All right, so let's get into it. As usual, this is going to be an imperfect sort of analogy for a pack 1 pick 1 scenario, because you've usually already drafted a leader pool and you kind of have an idea of what you want from there. So I'm going to be judging cards, and that should factor into your the way you judge cards. So I'm going to be judging cards based on just sort of as best I can in a vacuum, where it's leader independent, but of course that is truly impossible, so take these with a grain of salt. All right, our leader is Kylo Ren, who I don't think is particularly strong for draft, but hey, you know what? Maybe you can get there. The Holy City. All right, Fallen Jedi. Honestly, not really a pack 1 pick 1 card, but I do like this card a lot. One of the big draws for me to play Villainy on Saturday was because I had, I think, 2 of this guy and 1 of Knights of Ren. And that's just like a great 3-drop slot, right? Like, they're just stats beasts. They have the Force tag. Well, he has the Force tag. Knights of Ren, I don't believe, has the Force tag. Force Slow, these are one of those cards that you probably should try not to play. They just don't really do anything on their own. Vulptex, solid 2-drop. Great in the creatures deck. And a cute little guy. Big fan. Whoa, Hyperspace, Awakened Specters. Again, just kind of stats. It's fine. Night Saber, there's a lightsaber, and it's one that I'm very happy to play. Probably not first pickable, especially because of the double color aspects. That's something you need to consider whenever you're first picking. In Magic, famously, cards like any of the like swords of X and Y are great. Not always, but often great first picks in draft, not because they're like the most powerful cards in the format, but just because they'll go in literally any deck, right? So you have to consider things like that here too. Cure Wounds, sort of similar to Force Throw, is not really something you want to be doing. You can find better plays. Following the Path is a card that I had the opportunity to play this weekend and I chose not to. It's just, you're going down on card advantage. Like, you're playing a card and you're like not drawing 2 cards. You're putting 2 cards on the top, and sure, like, that's nice, I guess, but yeah, there's better things you can be doing with your 1 resource and your card, more importantly. And also it's double aspect, so not first pickable for the most part anyway. Jedi in Hiding is, again, I've talked about it, pretty solid card. It didn't play quite as well as I was expecting it to, but again, could just be variance. So far, no, like, obviously first pickable cards. There's Drain Essence, which is removal. It's not great removal for a first pick situation because, again, that double aspect cost. But it is still removal. Gives you the Force immediately, which is nice. Your opponent can't control you out of the Force if you play things like this, and I think it's absolutely a solid card for a Vigilance Villainy deck, but I'm feeling lucky. I think we can find something a little bit better for a first pick, and this is not it. Focus Determines Reality. It's just one of those cards that doesn't do anything on its own, and I think almost every card in draft you do needs to do something on its own. Acclimator Assault Ship. I think I pulled 3 of these this weekend, so I got a play set of these, and now I have an extra if anyone wants one. Jokes aside, obviously this is a very powerful effect, but playing it for 9 and then also getting to, ready and swing next turn is a big ask and not one that I think you can reasonably do. All right, we're down to our last uncommon, and it's Sorisu Stance, and as you know from my set review, I really am not high on this card. I don't think it's good at all, but again, it's just you're going down a card for something so small as a shield token and a resource, but yeah, I don't think so. And our rare is Jedi Trials, which is a funny card. It's a great flavor card, right? You keep training as a Jedi and getting stronger, and then once you're strong enough, you pass your trials and you have the Jedi trait. I like this card a lot flavor-wise. It's one of my favorites for that, but I don't know if this is worth playing. It's just kind of slow. If you play this and your opponent, can remove the unit that you put it on, they will, and if they can't, they will probably start to anyway. So like if you put this on a 2/4 and they have a 2/4 and a 3/3, then they're going to attack their 2/4 into yours. They'll do this, and then next turn you'll just kill the unit, and yeah, I just don't think it gets there. And lastly, we have a foil common. It is another Vulptex. Okay, so I didn't put any contenders along the wall here, so now I have to sort of go through sort of the search of shame here to find like actually considering cards. So Vulptex, I guess I'll put here just because of its aspect, the fact it can like reluctantly be put into any heroism deck, and it's actively good in some of them. These are not happening. That's not happening. Drain Essence I'll put just because it's removal. Jedi in Hiding I'll put. Nope. Lightsaber I guess I'll put up there. Fallen Jedi I'll put up there. Okay. So I think the 5 cards that are contenders, and this is a very weak pack. Don't misunderstand me here. I'm not particularly excited about any of the cards in here as a first pick, but Drain Essence because it's removal, Fallen Jedi because of its aspect and its force tag and its solid stats, and by its aspect I mean the fact it's only villainy, so you'll play this in any villainy deck, and you will play this in any villainy deck. Lightsaber, I think I'm going to take out just because of its restrictive cost and the fact that you'll probably get something later. Vulptex, same as Fallen Jedi. The only reason it's here is because of that tag, but honestly I think it's worse, so I'll just put it here, and then Jedi in Hiding. So we're at our top 3 here, and between these 3, this is where sort of your leader calculations come into play. If you have like your strongest leaders are villainy, then you would probably consider something like Fallen Jedi because you're guaranteed going to play it. But if you're like unsure, then honestly, I think Jedi in Hiding is probably the strongest card in the pack. As a pick one scenario, it beats out Drain Essence because of the aspect. If Drain Essence was like just Vigilance, I think I would be taking it here. But the Vigilance villainy sort of stresses me out a little bit. So between these two, I think it's probably more likely that you will play Jedi in Hiding over Fallen Jedi. But honestly, that could be wrong. I think these 2 cards are probably very close in evaluation. My reasoning mostly is because even though this is a great stats card, Fallen Jedi, it does play a little bit poorly because there's so many 2/4s. And a 3/3 and a 3/4 both attack into 2/4s kind of in the exact same way, in that it takes 2 attacks to kill either side, and then of course both sides die. So definitely I think, but that being said, of course, 4 is quite a bit better than 3 for that. But the hidden means you're immediately getting attack, or you're getting an attack for sure, and the 1 defeated can come up sometimes. So I think I would take Jedi and hiding here, but I am definitely open to the fact that Fallen Jedi could be better for sure. Definitely a very weak pack. I would not ever really want to be first picking this card, just to be clear. So hopefully whenever I end up going to my first draft, which I think will be next week, I don't have to make a decision like that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?